My Own 10 Rules for a Happy Marriage by James Thurber. Nobody, I hasten to announce, has asked me to formulate a set of rules for the preparation of marital bliss and the preservation of the tranquil American boudoir and inglenook. The idea just came to me one day when I watched a couple in an apartment across the court from mine, gesturing and banging tables and throwing objet d'art at each other. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but it was obvious, as the shot put followed the hammer throw, that he and or she, as the lawyers would put it, had deeply offended her and or him. Their apartment, before they began to take it apart, had been quietly and tastefully arranged, but it was a little hard to believe this now, as he stood there by the fireplace, using an andiron to bat back the royal Doulton figurines she was curving at him from her strongly entrenched position behind the davenport. I wondered what had started the exciting but costly battle, and brooding on the general subject of husbands and wives, I found myself compiling my own 10 rules for a happy marriage. I have avoided the time-worn admonitions such as praise her new hat, share his hobbies, be a sweetheart as well as a wife, and don't keep a blonde in the guest room, not only because they are threadbare from repetition, but also because they don't seem to have accomplished their purpose. Maybe what we need is a brand new set of rules. Anyway, ready or not, here they come, the result of 50 years, I began as a little boy, spent in studying the nature and behavior, mistakes and misunderstandings of the American male, Homo Americanus, and his mate. Rule 1. Neither party to a sacred union should run down, disparage, or badmouth the other's former girls or beaux, as the case may be. The tendency to attack the character, looks, intelligence, capability, and achievements of one's mate's former friends of the opposite sex is a common cause of domestic discontent. Sweetheart slurring, as we will call this deplorable practice, is encouraged by a long spell of gloomy weather, too many highballs, hangovers, and the suspicion that one's spouse is hiding and finding letters in a hollow tree, or is intercepting the postman, or putting in secret phone calls from the corner drugstore. These fears almost always turn out to be unfounded, but the unfounded fear, as we all know, is worse than the founded. Aspersions, insinuations, reflections, or just plain cracks about old boyfriends and girlfriends should be avoided at all times. Here are some of the expressions that should be especially eschewed. That waffle-fingered minor league third baseman you latched onto at Cornell? You know the girl I mean, the one with the hips who couldn't read. That old flame of yours, with the vocabulary of a hoot owl. And you remember her, that old bat who chewed gum and dressed like Daniel Boone? This kind of derogatory remark, if persisted in by one or both parties to a marriage, will surely lead to divorce, or at best a blow on the head with a glass ashtray. Rule 2. A man should make an honest effort to get the names of his wife's friends right. This is not easy. The average wife who was graduated from college at any time during the past 30 years keeps in close touch with at least 7 old classmates. These ladies, known as the girls, are named respectively Mary, Marian, Melissa, Marjorie, Maribel, Madeline, and Miriam, and all of them are called Myrtle by the careless husband we are talking about. Furthermore, he gets their nicknames wrong. This, to be sure, is understandable, since their nicknames are, respectively, Molly, Muffy, Missy, Midge, Mabby, Maddie, and Mims. The careless husband, out of thoughtlessness or pure cussedness, calls them all Mugs, or, when he is feeling particularly brutal, Mucky. All the girls are married, one of them to a Ben Tompkins, and as this is the only one he can remember, our hero calls all the husbands Ben or Tompkins, adding to the general annoyance and confusion. If you are married to a college graduate, then, try to get the names of her girlfriends and their husbands straight. This will prevent some of those interminable arguments that begin after Midge and Harry, not Mucky and Ben, have said a stiff good night and gone home. Rule 3. A husband should not insult his wife publicly at parties. He should insult her in the privacy of the home. Thus, if a man thinks the soufflés his wife makes are as tough as an outfielder's glove, he should tell her so when they are at home, not when they are out at a formal dinner party where a perfect soufflé has just been served. The same rule applies to the wife. She should not regale his men friends or women friends with hilarious accounts of her husband's clumsiness, remarking that he dances like a 1907 Pope Hartford, or that he locked himself in the children's rabbit pen and couldn't get out. All parties must end finally, and the husband or wife who has revealed all may find that there is hell to pay in the taxi going home. Rule 4. The wife who keeps saying, "Isn't that just like a man?" and the husband who keeps saying, "Oh, well, you know how women are likely to grow farther and farther apart through the years. These famous generalizations have the effect of reducing an individual to the anonymous status of a mere unit in a mass. The wife who, just in time, comes upon her husband about to fry an egg in a dry skillet should not classify him with all other males, but should give him the accolade of a special distinction. She might say, for example, "George, no other man in the world would try to do a thing like that." Similarly, a husband watching his wife laboring to start the car without turning on the ignition should not say to the gardener or a passer-by, "Oh, well, you know," etc. Instead, he should remark to his wife, "I've seen a lot of women in my life, Nellie, but I've never seen one who could touch you." Certain critics of this rule will point out that the specific comments I would substitute for the old familiar generalizations do not solve the problem. They will maintain that the husband and wife will be sore and sulky for several days, no matter what is said. One wife, reading Rule 4 over my shoulder, exclaimed, "Isn't that just like a man?" This brings us right back to where we started. Well, you know how women are. Rule 5. When a husband is reading aloud, a wife should sit quietly in her chair, relaxed but attentive. If he has decided to read the Republican platform, an article on elm blight, or a blow-by-blow account of a prize fight, it is not going to be easy, but she should at least pretend to be interested. She should not keep swinging one foot, start to wind her wristwatch, file her fingernails, or clap her hands in an effort to catch a mosquito. The good wife allows the mosquito to bite her when her husband is reading aloud. She should not break in to correct her husband's pronunciation, or to tell him one of his socks is wrong side out. When the husband has finished, the wife should not plunge instantly into some irrelevant subject. It's wiser to exclaim, "How interesting!" or at the very least, "Well, well." She might even compliment him on his diction and his grasp of politics, elm blight, or boxing. If he should ask some shrewd question to test her attention, she can cry, "Good heavens!" leap up and rush out to the kitchen on some urgent fictitious errand. This may fool him, or it may not. I hope, for her sake and his, that it does. Rule 6. A husband should try to remember where things are around the house, so that he does not have to wait for his wife to get home from the hairdresser's before he can put his hands on what he wants. Among the things a husband is usually unable to locate are the iodine, the aspirin, the nail file, the French vermouth, his cuff links, studs, black silk socks and evening shirts, the snapshots taken at Nantucket last summer, his favorite recording of Kentucky Babe, the borrowed copy of The Road to Milltown, the garage key, his own towel, the last bill from Brooks Brothers, his pipe cleaners, the poker chips, crackers, cheese, the whetstone, his new raincoat, and the screens for the upstairs windows. I don't really know the solution to this problem, but one should be found. Perhaps every wife should draw for her husband a detailed map of the house, showing clearly the location of everything he might need. Trouble is, I suppose, he would lay the map down somewhere and not be able to find it until his wife got home. Rule 7. If a husband is not listening to what his wife is saying, he should not grunt, okay, or yeah, sure, or make some little affirmative noise. A husband lost in thought or worry is not likely to take in the sense of such a statement as this: "We're going to the Gordons for dinner tonight, John, so I'm letting the servants off. Don't come home from the office first. Remember, we both have to be at the dentist's at 5, and I'll pick you up there with the car." Now an okay or a yeah sure at this point can raise havoc if the husband hasn't really been listening. As usual, he goes all the way out to his home in Glenville, 13 miles from the dentist's office and 17 miles from the Gordon's house, and he can't find his wife. He can't find the servants. His wife can't get him on the phone because all she gets is the busy buzz. John is calling everybody he can think of, except, of course, the dentist and the Gordons. At last he hangs up, exhausted and enraged. Then the phone rings. It is his wife, and here let us leave them. Rule 8. If your husband ceases to call you Sugarfoot or Candy Eyes or Cutie Fudge Pie during the first year of your marriage, it is not necessarily a sign that he has come to take you for granted or that he no longer cares. It is probably an indication that he has recovered his normal perspective. Many a young husband who once called his wife tender mittens or taffy ears or rose lips has become austere or important, like a common pleas judge, and he wouldn't want reports of his youthful frivolity to get around. If he doesn't call you Dagmar when your name is Daisy, you are sitting pretty. Rule 9. For those whose husbands insist on pitching for the married men against the single men at the 4th of July picnic of the First M.E. Church, I have the following suggestions. Don't sit on the sidelines and watch him. Get lost. George is sure to be struck out by a 14-year-old boy, pull up with a Charlie horse running to first, and get his teeth knocked out by an easy grounder to the mounted. When you see him after the game, tell him everybody knew the little boy was throwing illegal spitballs. Everybody saw the first baseman spike George, and everybody said that grounder took such a nasty bounce even Phil Rizzuto couldn't have fielded it. Remember, most middle-aged husbands get to sleep at night by imagining they are striking out the entire batting order of the Yankees. Rule 10. A wife's dressing table should be inviolable. It is the one place in the house a husband should get away from and stay away from. And yet the average husband is drawn to it as by a magnet, especially when he is carrying something wet, oily, greasy, or sticky, such as a universal joint, a hubcap, or the blades of a lawn-mower. His excuse for bringing these alien objects into his wife's bedroom in the first place is that he is looking for an old rag with which to wipe them off. There are no old rags in the lady's boudoir, but husbands never seem to learn this. They search hampers, closets, and bureau drawers, expecting to find a suitable pile of cloth, but first they set the greasy object on the dressing table. The aggrieved wife may be tempted, following this kind of vandalism, to lock her bedroom door and kick her husband out for good. I suggest, however, a less stringent punishment. Put a turtle in his bed. The wife who is afraid to pick up a turtle should ask Junior to help her. Junior will love it. Now I realize, in glancing back over these rules, that some of my solutions to marital problems may seem a little untidy, that I have indeed left a number of loose ends here and there. For example, if the husbands are going to mislay their detailed maps of household objects, I have accomplished nothing except to add one item for the distraught gentleman to lose. Then there is that turtle. Captious critics will point out that a turtle in a husband's bed is not a valid solution to anything, but merely a further provocation. The outraged husband will deliberately trip his wife during their next mixed doubles match. She will thereupon retaliate by putting salt in his breakfast coffee. Two persons living in holy matrimony, I should have said long before this, must avoid slipping into blasphemy, despond, apathy, and the subjunctive mood. A husband is always set on edge by his mates, "Far be it from me," or "Be that as it may." This can lead to other ominous openings. "Would God that," and "Had I only had the good sense to," and the couple is then in the gloomy subcellar of the pluperfect subjunctive, a place in which no marriage can thrive. The safest place for a happy wedded pair is the indicative mood, and of its tenses the present is the most secure. The future is a domain of threats and worries, and the past is a wasteland of sorrows and regrets. I can only hope, in conclusion, that this treatise itself will not start, in any household, a widening gap that can never be closed. Thank you for listening. Like, comment, and subscribe, and click that bell button.